So thank you so much for coming. It's really great to see all of you here today, and I hope that we're going to have some really great conversation. My name is Ryerson. I'm the VP Equity here at the Students Union, and I hope to slow this right down. So yesterday I did it really fast. So before all of our events or anything that we do, we like to acknowledge the space that we're on. So as many of us are settlers on this land, it is our collective responsibility to pay respect and to recognize that this land occupies traditional territory of the Mississauga of the Ukrainian First Nations, and we are here because this land was occupied. In recognizing that this land occupies colonized First Nations territories, and out of respect for the rights of Indigenous people, it is our collective responsibility to honor, protect, and sustain this land. And we're going to be having some really great conversation. Really excited to talk with all of you today. But I sort of want to set a little bit of a foundation for the conversations that we're going to have today. So student union solidarity is based on the principle that all members are equal and deserve mutual respect and understanding. As members of the Students Union, mutual respect, cooperation, and understanding are our goals. We should neither condone or tolerate behavior that undermines the dignity or self-esteem of any individual or creates an intimidating, hostile, or offensive environment. It is our collective responsibility for creating an inclusive space for discussion and dialogue. All forms of discrimination and harassment will not be tolerated, nor will hate speech rooted in but not limited to anti-Muslim, anti-Arab, anti-Semitic, sexist, racist, classist, ableist, homophobic, or transphobic sentiments and or remarks. We all have an obligation to ensure that an open and inclusive space free of hate is established. If you're not here in understanding or in good faith, or you violated this understanding, you may be asked to leave. Okay, so everyone's good? Good. Yes. All right, perfect. So I'm just going to call Winnie up and to introduce the first speakers.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the second Lunch and Learn of our Ryerson Social Justice Week. This is the third annual Ryerson Social Justice Week, and the theme this year is Rebuilding the We. This is what solidarity looks like. And it's through this week, through Lunch and Learn, through the evening plenaries, that we are hoping to engage more students, more community members together in making sure that social justice matters get on the map, and making sure that we could have discussions, we can have examinations and explorations, and be respectful and agreeing with each other. But at the end of the day, it's deepening our understanding, deepening our practice on what solidarity should look like and should be like. This has been on an annual basis with the Social Justice Week. We work with different campus unions to make this happen. So Ryerson Students Union has been one of the key supporters. Ryerson Faculty Associations, OPSU representing the staff, and QP 3904 representing all the part-time instructors. We also in the past worked closely with CISA, the union that represents all the part-time students. Doing this as part of the announcement throughout this week is to, this year we regret to inform everyone that we have to remove CISA as an official co-sponsor of the week over their lockout actions that in the bargaining process. Two of their unionized employees, QP 1281 members, have been locked out of the workplace as of September 30th. And with the theme of this is what solidarity looks like, the lockout actions runs contrary to the practice, the visions of social justice and respect and inclusion. But it doesn't exclude part-time students to participate in all the events. This is our collective way in saying that some actions should not be taken without further intent. So, that as an announcement, I'd like to turn to the panel and the plenary. This event is a partnership between myself as a CAW Sam Ginden Chair in Social Justice and Democracy with Marilyn Strathers, the John C. Eaton Chair on Social Innovations through the Faculty of Community Services. folks in this discussion is, you know, we've seen in the last couple of decades, social innovation seems to be the catch-all phrase in terms of community economic development, community social justice initiatives. So we are saying, what are some of the lessons we can learn from the community sectors? You know, what's the difference between social entrepreneurship and social innovations? Is social innovations synonymous with social justice? Where do the two meet and or diverge, right? And what are some of the implications from the community sector, the lessons we can learn from the community sector that have implications, and how we can take those lessons on the Ryerson? So this is sort of an invitation for the conversations that we're going to have, and we see this as the beginning of an ongoing dialogue process. So without further ado, I want to introduce Marilyn. Marilyn, as a social innovator, came to Ryerson with a career in the nonprofit sector that spanned over 40 years. She has worked in organizations that provide services in child and adult mental health, arts, First Nations communities, and violence against women. For the past 14 years, Marilyn was a program manager in Ontario Trillion Foundations, the province-wide granting program. Marilyn has been responsible for the major investments supporting new concepts, networks, collaborations, and managing grants that have provided the Ontario service sector with the capacity to innovate. And we are really fortunate at Ryerson to have Marilyn joining us. So Marilyn, I've been please join me in welcoming Marilyn.
Oh, there we go, the voice of God. It's always better. Social innovation, better when you turn it on. I just want to say thank you to Winnie for the opportunity to share this space in her quite wonderful Social Justice Week. So I feel very privileged to be here and to be invited to share in this conversation. And I thought what I might do find my PowerPoint. So the fellow that set this up, do you mind? I thought what I might do here is talk a little bit about what the Johnson Chair of Innovation and Entrepreneurship is for as I begin to learn this. And thank you so much. A tiny, tiny bit about who I am. Sorry, you want to try again? A tiny bit about who I am, and then I thought the best thing I could probably do is explain to you how I understand social innovation from having done the work that I've done in the last while. And so I've prepared a PowerPoint presentation, which you're going to get shortly. I will tell you the 10 seconds about myself. I've come up through the social justice movement. I worked for many, many years in violence against women. I have worked in all sorts of equity work. I live in a small rural community north of here, and I've commuted back and forth to Toronto for more than a decade to gain my employment. And I did a little interview with colleagues of mine at the Ontario Nonprofit Network. Some of you may know that that's a new and 3-4-year-old, quite wonderful network of nonprofit organizations now, including many, many social justice organizations. And so I went to them and said, how do you see these two things together? How do you see them? Are they separate? Are they the same? Do they fit together? And I didn't find a soul who found a difference in their own stories that would allow a clear delineation. And I think there are some, and I think to have the conversation is really interesting because it's a time of fast and abrupt change in the nonprofit sector, and we need to find the guideposts as we go along. So, the John Seaton Chair has two mandates. We have a contest at home to see who can say this title amongst my kids. The first, to really build capacity within the faculty in the university to teach and learn about social innovation methodologies, which are a distinct set of methodologies. And the second is to create and maintain linkages with university and community partners that does something significant and systems changing in the child and youth sector. So at the top line, we're looking at a minor in social innovation. We're looking at a website which will be launched shortly. I am now doing coaching with students and faculty who have projects that they believe are innovative and want to, that's what I've done all for many, many years at Trillium, is that kind of coaching. So open and happy to offer that here. Bottom part, doing some really interesting explore right now around child and youth mental health, because that is a system both in terms of student mental health and in terms of child and youth mental health that's in a critical time of flux. And I also have kids who have had mental health issues as children, so it's near and dear to my heart. And I can tell you, this is the price of admission for coming to Ryerson in that case. So, what is a social innovation? I will say to you that when Dean Usha George said to me, you got to come up with a definition, I went to the web, I found 22 million hits to define social innovation. And it's this sort of vagueness in language is why it's really, really important for us to narrow down what we mean in a community service setting about social innovation. There's a mainstream commercialization narrative that says social innovation is digital, it's business, you can sell it for a big fee, and maybe it creates some social benefit. That's not the narrative we're in. That's a dominant narrative. I have to say, I think it's a dominant narrative in places here at Ryerson. But here, I would suggest that we think about some, social innovation as offering a solution to a social problem. It aims for systemic change, that is, it's not a one-off. It's an idea that's actually an implementation, not in somebody's head, and it creates social impact for public benefit. A social entrepreneur, on the other hand, develops innovative solutions to social issues, to new ideas for wide-scale change. And a social entrepreneur doesn't necessarily run a social enterprise in our field. A social entrepreneur could be a builder of a social program, which might be a social enterprise. It could be an intrapreneur. This is a role that I've often taken, and many of my colleagues here in the room take as well. Really moving ahead large social systems so that they are open and able to put resources into the places of current change. And the third area, which is a collaborator, or what I think of as a network weaver, and a network weaver really weaves across an entire landscape. So when we're talking systems change, we now see in the sector the entire literacy sector working together to determine what change should look like. We see that in a number of different sectors. Paul, I'm going to introduce you to, is a friend and colleague, is a consummate network weaver, and he'll tell you what kind of weaving is going on in the province right now around social enterprise. A social enterprise is a program that uses a business model to reach social outcome. Many nonprofits own social enterprises. Many social enterprises are nonprofits. This is not a one-size-fits-all, and it's not a new idea. Cooperatives in this country were developed way back in the 30s, and they gave workers control over the working conditions, the marketing conditions that they sold fish, or in my community, Gay Butter is a co-op. It's an old idea. I think it's some of the reselling kinds of Goodwill is the word I'm looking for. Goodwill Services is something like 78 or 80 years old now in this country. So it's not a new idea. Business may have just discovered this idea, but that doesn't make it a new idea. And social enterprise seeks a blended return on investment. That means social and financial and sometimes environmental benefit. Social innovation tends to tackle complex problems, or what we call wicked problems. So these are problems that have multiple causes, are tough to describe, they have interlocking issues, they're not solvable through traditional processes. They are sometimes created or worsened by the very systems that we thought we built to help. And they're often things where problem solvers tend to try and reduce this to simple solutions. Campus mental health is a wicked problem. We have here on this campus 100% increase in students seeking mental health support. Why? We don't know. It's complex. It's not a single thing. A complex problem. Okay, can you hear me now?
Is that better?
No. So I just forge ahead. Can you hear me well enough? I don't have much of a voice, but it lasts for a little body, right?
I was going to move closer to the front and make it more intimate.
So what we're finding is that these complex problems require multiple solutions that cross a landscape. They're not one-off initiatives. And that sometimes when we're spending money on one-off initiatives, we may not be doing the best thing that we might do. So we look for now collaborative approaches, generative relationships, often with unlike folks working together to create something that neither alone could think of. We talk about collective impact. There's some really good literature coming out on what it takes to achieve collective impact. And we look at emergent planning and evaluation. So I'm going to whiz through the pictures that have shaped my life in thinking about this work in the last while. I worked for the federal government for a while, and I found that I couldn't describe the nonprofit sector, the community service sector, as I knew it, except in my turn to picture, and that's what I did. So here is a map of Canada. In the 1970s, 80s, we started to watch men die in our communities, and we didn't know why. That's you. Is that good? Oh, all right. Voice of the goddess comes back. We started to see men dying in our communities, and we didn't know why. And we did what the nonprofit sector always does. We created organizations, and then we joined them up. We've done the same thing when we look at kids with reading problems. School systems are not enough. We create nonprofits, organizations around that support kids reading, and then we join them up. We've done it with keeping seniors in their home, Meals on Wheels, those kinds of things. We've done it when we thought about kids with guns and gangs and the complex issues that they face in their lives. And so the nonprofit sector, the community service sector, is about half of the nonprofit sector in Canada, really is hard to see because it looks a bit like a mass. But what it actually is a network. It's a network of complex, adaptive system of care in this community that is deeply a part of the way this country works. So what do we learn when we think about ourselves as a complex adaptive system, as a network? We look to the natural world, we look to starlings and how they form, we look at schools of fish, all kinds of different ways of thinking about organizing. In social innovation, we think about how people work. So we organize ourselves fundamentally in two different ways. There might be others, but these are the two that I think about. In a bureaucracy, like Ryerson, we have a hierarchy. In our social lives, our organizational lives, often we have networks. In the past, what we've done is we've mobilized hierarchies in order to solve problems. Now we look at mobilizing both hierarchies and networks. And the internet has been enormously helpful in our ability to be able to do that. So they're different ways of working. A hierarchy works like a well-oiled machine, every cog in its place. A network works in a much more dispersed, ground-up, grassroots, bottom-up kind of way. And we're also seeing money changing in the way that it flows in our communities. We used to talk about the three distinct pillars of civil society, government, and corporate sector. Now we're starting to wonder what happens in this overlap place. And I think this is one of the tension areas around social justice thinking. But in fact, what has happened as though these two areas, both the markets are complex adaptive systems, so is the nonprofit sector, wildly experimental space. Some of what's happening in there is good, some of it's indifferent, and some of it is not so good. But it's an interesting place to watch. And in that space sits social enterprise, sits preferred approaches to procurement, which would see government buying, filling its purchasing needs first from the nonprofit sector and second from business. We're seeing shared purchasing, shared platforms, shared office space like the Center for Social Innovation. Sort of a whole bunch of different kinds of themes that have emerged really quite rapidly in the last decade and a half. And we're also seeing the advent of social finance. And there's still corporate social responsibility, and some of it's better than it used to be. We're now starting to see government move in and begin to experiment with public-private partnerships. So we've seen the sector have access to a more diverse funding economy. Used to be success was if you had a good idea, government would fund. I know as a funder, having worked as funder at the Trillium Foundation for the last number of years, I had to quiz people on sustainability planning because